Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that's always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value, especially in the context of everything that falls under the topics of healing, growth, leadership, and creativity. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. I'm the creator of a practice called Wild Soul Movements. I run a year-long women's circle online every year called Power. I run virtual new moon circles every month, weekend workshops all over the planet throughout the year. I do public speaking, I work with clients one-on-one, and I also do stand-up comedy now. This is a place where you can come with your multiple talents and passions to be encouraged, nourished, and cultivated. There's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators, to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. The main intention here is to contribute to creating a kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's background experiences and truths, and they learn to trust in themselves and life and recognize that we really do need each other. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs to hear it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear here and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating or review wherever you listen from. Thank you so much for being here with me, and now let's get into the show. This is episode number 303 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, and today one of my nearest and dearest, Ahlea Khadro, is here on the show, and she is the type of person that I consider a pocket person, meaning we talk so often, I often feel almost as if she is in my pocket constantly, and I adore her. And today we're talking about how we heal. Something you'll notice more of on the show this year are conversations about healing. In a couple weeks, my dear friend Zuyapa Jackson is going to be on talking about this again, because healing is so nuanced, it's so complex, the path is different for everyone, and we all have things to heal. So this was a great conversation to get us rolling. Ahlea's big truth was that rupture and repair are more important than being perfect. From there, we got into the undulations of life, the cycles of creation, the great dance of back and forth that we do constantly as we evolve and heal. We talked about resiliency and intention, especially as it relates to parenting. Ahlea generously shared a lot about her experience as a single mother, of stewarding a being from childbirth on, and how throughout these stages, women are called upon to use skills they don't always get to use, but absolutely have. She talked about savoring the moments of peak intensity, some of the issues light polarization creates in New Agism, and how we engage with ourselves during challenges. So this conversation was so juicy. We touched on so many healing topics. I can't wait to hear what you take away from it. As always, you can find me on Instagram, tag me, share the episode, send me a DM, let me know what you thought, share it up, listen to this one more than once, and enjoy it so much. The show notes can be found at untameyourself.com/303. And as well, just like every week, I'm reminding you, if you have a desire to connect with me one-on-one in either of the ways that I support people in that capacity, which is through Akashic Records readings or deeper 2-day immersions, that is my one-on-one work, head on over to wildsoulmovement.com. Both of those things are listed under Work With Me, and I'd absolutely love to connect with you. All right, y'all, let's get into today's episode with Ahlea. Ahlea! Woo! I'm so happy you're here.
Me too.
The good listeners know it's almost like extra juicy when it's a near and dear person to me.
because we can explore in ways that I can't when I'm just getting to know folks. So, how are you feeling in your body today, friend?
Oh, how am I feeling in my body? I'm feeling juicy and loved, and I'm feeling the change of seasons in my body. Really feeling that.
Were you achy at all? I was having such interesting pain in like my middle back and like around my rib cage yesterday.
Yeah, people, every time the season gets hot or cold, you know how doors expand and contract?
Yes.
I'm like, okay, people, our tissues do similar things.
Yeah.
So we have to consider. And the trickiest seasons for people are usually fall into winter and then winter into spring because it's dramatic.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I felt some of the achiness and I felt, just the kind of like cusp kind of experience
Yeah.
in it.
And it was funny. So, people listening, we're recording this the day after the spring equinox, which is why this is the conversation. But, even it was very springy out the last few days. And then today it's like overcast and windy and cool. Like I had to put the heat on. And I'm like, not yet. Not yet. And then, what is a truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
I've been sitting with this idea, as a single mom, I'm really feeling this as a mom with my son, but it applies to all my relationships, including with myself. And it's the idea that rupture and repair is more important than being perfect.
I love this. As it's so funny, because I told you this, I'm writing that down. Rupture and repair is more important than being perfect. I just don't want to lose the thought. I don't plan much, but as you were starting to talk, I started to write down single motherhood because I wanted to make sure we cover that at some point. And then you said, as a single mother, and I was like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yep. Yeah, it's not the way I envisioned it would be, but I'm fully taking it on and finding it excruciating and empowering and exhausting and heart ripping open, beautiful. Yeah.
You posted something on Facebook, I think it was only like yesterday or something, where your son asked you like, what's the biggest thing in the universe?
Yeah.
And what
Yeah,
go
he
tell
was
it.
pondering. You could see he was like, Mama, what's the biggest thing in the universe? And I was like, I think it's UI Scooty. Right? And he's like, I love you bigger than UI Scooty. I'm just like,
Do you die? What happens when your child says that? Do you just start sobbing?
you get like, oh yeah. And I'll share more to it. It was after, like, yesterday morning was like a total shit show in the morning. It was so hardcore. I had our first sleepover. We had a little friend over, and the parents needed to be out of town. So I was like, sure, I'll take him. So I've got a 5-year-old and my son is 6. And it brought up a lot for my son of jealousy, of like, he's not used to sharing me at all with anyone, right? So the little boy and I were both enjoying our broccoli dinner, right? My son doesn't like broccoli, and it actually, in his mind, and the beauty with working with kids, and this is true with all people, is you learn to read the code, right? So their behavior, they don't have a prefrontal cortex, so they can't say, I'm experiencing envy,
Right.
So all I know is he left the room, like threw his food down and was like, I'm not eating the broccoli. And I was like, what's going on, buddy? And he said, you don't like me.
Oh.
Right? And in his mind, it had just been like, you like him more now because he likes broccoli. Yeah. So it'd be great, right? So the dance of life is disconnect and connect, right? That's how we undulate. And in yoga, that's the whole point of union, right? Is we separate to come back together. And in, the Kashmir Shaivism has this beautiful philosophy of like that undulation of like create, and then you come back and forth, right? It's one of my favorite creation stories. But I think about that with my son is like, as I'm teaching him how to be in the world and to create an unconditionally loving environment, is I have to be big enough to allow him to be disconnected within the connection. So to have that experience and to say, wow, you're allowed to feel that way. And I totally love you. I love you more than anything. So yeah, at the end of the day, he wanted to tell me he loved me more than you, Scooty.
It's really sweet. So earlier today, I was just looking for a sheet of paper to write down like some things that I need at the store later. And I found this little journal that was something I hadn't used since a workshop at 2016. And there was a little note in it, and I tore it out. It was just sitting over here. And as you were saying that, I was looking over at the note, and it's so funny because the note is, it's okay to love someone and not want to be with them if being with them means you can't be with you. If you can't figure out both, it's okay to take a time out and see if you can. And I feel like what you just said about being able to be disconnected within the connection, it very much relates to that thing in adult relationships, right? Totally different with children. We're not going to be like, I don't know if I could be with this kid.
And it's not really different, right? We can totally apply it. So absolutely, you're right.
Yeah. So here's something I'm very curious about, and as well to just like take some time to acknowledge the single moms who we have listening. As I think about this, because you and I talk very regularly, several times a week, and there are some times where you're expressing that you're like just underwater, and I'm over here just like by myself without these responsibilities, and I don't feel guilty about stuff like that. Like everyone is on their path with whatever is going on with them, but how do you do that? This is what I think about all the time. I'm like, how do people do this? How do people do this?
It comes back to resiliency and intention.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's such a privilege that I get to love this little being. And I get to be a steward for him. And for me, it's like the ultimate spiritual practice, because when you parent and you have this little person that triggers my own PTSD from my childhood, and I have skills. I have lots of skills, but my shit gets triggered, and I'm in it, and I have to remind myself all the time, I'm in PTSD, but he's not.
Yep.
PTSD, he's not, and I breathe, and I try to take, I give myself timeouts, or like my real self-care is me taking a bath while he's like dropping toys on me in the bathtub, or like, extra Epsom salts, and I'll be like, Mama just needs a few minutes to be quiet, and I think we're so strong, and we're so, we're just so resilient, and I just find that if I dig in and I deepen, and it's also just the situation I'm in, would I like more support or different? Yeah, sometimes I definitely would, and it's exquisite.
Yeah, thank you.
It's that cross section of excruciation and liberation, where, yeah.
I call this bliscruciating. I made up a word for that.
I love it.
Maybe yours is libscruciating. I don't know. Liberuciating. Doesn't matter. I get it.
Shabating.
So I appreciate what you just said. You have a lot of skills. Actually, I normally don't ask people to do this, but I want you to tell us all the skills, because there are some things that I think I don't even know about you. I was reading your bio, and that's why I was like, damn, I knew you had all these skills. But so I'm going to have you share that for emphasis, that it literally doesn't matter how trained someone is, how proficient, how aware, how intuitive. If someone is a shaman, if someone is like knows energy medicine, has gone to medical school, we're always, as part of our human experience, which is our spiritual experience, we're going to hit stuff that we just cannot handle on our own in a moment.
Absolutely. And it is about, for me, it's about the embodiment of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I get to apply, and I loved childbirth and labor and birth, because it was one of those experiences where I got to use skills that I very rarely get to use.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's true for all women. Like, we get into this place where you access parts of yourself. So in the same sort of echoing of that, I find that in my life, I invite and I savor those moments of peak intensity
Mm.
to access parts of myself and either clear or heal or allow the ripples to move through. But I'm able to access parts of myself that, are maybe sometimes more dormant because day to day doesn't demand it, invite it. Right?
This is an amazing point too, because I think sometimes when people are, we get to talk about something that I think is a little, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but maybe sticky. I've been doing this thing on Instagram lately where I'll take a quote that's just like a self-help soundbite and I'll be like, hey, there's more to this, like yes and, or let's go deeper, or maybe it's not this simple for everybody. And so this is one of those things about how we co-create our life. I know in the law of attraction sense, when it's used sometimes inadvertently and sometimes intentionally to like shame folks, like, well, what did you do to attract that? Like, that's the kind of question that could be very liberating, but could also make you like get a little stabby, like I want to like stick a pencil in someone's face. But as you were saying that part, I'm like, this is probably why some of us do, quote, manifest certain traumas and events, because we actually need to know that we have these parts, that we have these skills. There are these dormant things, luckily, we don't have to access and use, but it's good to know.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous part of kind of the new age world that we're in, is that it's so light polarized, shaming, and it's been so focused on to ascend. And my experience from being injured as a young girl was not about ascending. I didn't want to detach, and I actually had a really profound experience after having surgery when I was like 12 or 13 years old, where I really got clear that I wanted to fully embody, like that I wanted to feel the freedom of my spirit, my human body. I wanted to saturate it in my cells. I was a competitive gymnast and I was injured, and I had 4 reconstructive surgeries. And in the process of that, I was actually diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. And I had a really bad reaction to the anesthesia in my 3rd and 4th surgery, where they used my own bone to rebuild a kneecap, my structure. So I had bone reconstruction, and then I couldn't have any pain medicine for like 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
So I had this extreme reaction. They tried giving me suppositories and IV and this, and I just was in such reaction. And in that experience of extreme pain and like holding totally still in a hospital bed for that many days, I actually learned, I received spontaneous like pranayama guidance and mantras. And during that time, I really, you can either focus on the pain and you'll go crazy, or you can't really exit the body when you're in that much pain because, you just can't. It's too demanding. So I really learned in that moment that I had to find, another dimensional way to get into it, to slide into my experience and open it and be in it, that accessed a way through it. So that was, I think, probably the first time that I really got that. I wasn't afraid of the pain. I wasn't afraid of kind of the dark or the icky or the sticky. Yeah, and in the light polarized world now, it's like, yeah, oh my God, well, what did you do to attract that? Okay, so shame me for like being human and attracting a challenge, where a flat tire or whatever it might be is, and I'm, like put in this world of being, a health advocate. So, oh my God, I got the cold, and like, the judgments that people, and I'm like, okay, I have a human immune system. And, my time with Louise, we would joke about that. She would have something come up and she'd be like, we would joke. She'd be like, yeah, and I'm Louise Hay. Like it was just another layer of the onion, but it was this joke of like, yeah, we're the point isn't to be perfect.
Yeah, that's a great context, because I'm sure a lot of people listening have heard of Louise Hay or Hay House or are familiar with her books. How long did you work with her?
Over 15 years.
Yeah. So, and again, I guess we're really harping on this point, y'all. It truly doesn't matter who you are, how evolved, what your resources are. Like, if there's a lesson, if there's an experience, if there's something coming for you in this life that you need, you're going to have it.
Right. And it's really what you do with it. It's how you engage yourself.
Yep.
It's how you, what you bring to the table. It's if you're defensive, it's just a block to intimacy, and it's the defensiveness can be hidden in New Age spiritual jargon. And I see that a lot in my healing practice.
I didn't know. This is one of the ways that I experienced gaslighting, that I didn't know that's what it was when I was living in North County, San Diego. And again, what's so conflicting to me, you and I have had conversations offline too about narcissistic folks and gaslighting and emotional abuse and all this stuff. I truly just don't believe that most people who do those things even know that they're doing it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Right. It's the unconscious. Yeah.
It's so unconscious. So like there's part of you that wants to be like, F this person, but also it's like they're so traumatized and wounded themselves. Right. These behaviors are their own, like clinging to the falsely constructed sense of self that they've needed to do to survive their own trauma. So, I mean, the thing I say all the time is it explains it. It doesn't excuse it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
But it's wild. Okay, so take us back for a second. What are all your things?
So, yeah, okay. Let's see, where would we start? I studied a lot of different spiritual traditions. So I was, this injured gymnast, had this pretty heavy diagnosis. So when I was 15, I got a job in a hospital, right? So I started working in the X-ray department and learning about anatomy, and I have always had this intuitive gift of seeing into people's bodies, or seeing emotional blocks, or particularly things that people aren't saying. So like my aunt and uncle would be having a conversation, and I would say, well, this is really what she wants to say. Like, why aren't you saying it? And they would think that they confided in me, and it was like, because I really always thought everybody just wanted to hear the truth. Like, what's the problem?
This is one of the reasons why we're good friends.
Right. Right. And then I learned harshly, that, definitely the environment that I was growing up in, the community I was growing up in, didn't know how to embrace someone like me. So I honed sort of my gift of sight in this little X-ray department in like a farm hospital. I would see what I saw in the person, would see what their symptoms were. I'd look at the X-ray, I'd see what the doctor said. And then, and I'd sit in the back, like when it was quiet, and I would go through X-rays and I would study and I would learn. And because I knew that the diagnosis, like I was told I would have all my joints operated on by the time I was 25. I wouldn't have children. I'd basically be disabled and in a wheelchair. And, I had already had an experience of freedom and flying as a gymnast. I was like, yeah, that's not the path I'm taking. Absolutely not. So, and then I saw the limitations of the medical world, having worked in it for about 6 years, and, thought I'd go to medical school, started that route, and I knew I needed more. And I had a lot of trauma in myself and sexual wounds and all kinds of things that I knew I needed to clear. I didn't want to be in that victim state. So I immersed myself in spiritual traditions, and I lived in the Sikh community for a long time. I was able to study with Yogi Bhajan. I lived in a Sufi community, lived in intentional yoga communities, and studied Ayurveda, and studied and hosted Bun Lamas, and really deeply immersed myself in those profound teachings. Studied with a French osteopath, visceral manipulation, and of course craniosacral and nutrition, and so I've got all these schools and studies, and spiritual polarity and tantra. I really just devoted my entire life round the clock to for years I would do 6 hours of yoga practice every day. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do the cold shower, and put the oil everywhere, and do these really profound things to heal myself, but also to really gain tools to utilize to serve with the sight that I had. And I remember for many years I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd be pissed off. Like, I don't want to be doing this practice. And I would visualize in front of me my abusers, and I would visualize them standing in front of me, and I'd be like, I'm not just doing this for myself, I'm doing this for you too, and to just know that I wanted my effort to be for more than that. And yeah, and then I, left the intentional community I was in, which was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned, even, being, and that's for many people, the leaving of a cult, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Cult being part of culture, right? It's a culture of philosophy that people gather around. And that was an incredibly important time for me because I was shunned, and told I was leaving the spiritual path as if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go live in the ordinary world. And I thought, okay, well, that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go serve ordinary people in the ordinary world, and I'm going to love it. So I told myself I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to start a business. And I had run yoga retreat centers and started, several different iterations. And then I formed the Solstice, which I have now, is a healing and wellness center. And I've had it for over 15 years. And one day I got a call from Louise. I remember thinking, oh, this is what it means to serve ordinary people. Awesome.
Ordinary, in air quotes.
Absolutely, right. As if.
Yeah, that, and even like this piece that's comes through your story here around even that form of spiritual, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's elitism, right? When people want to be like, oh, go be in the ordinary world. And you're like...
Right. If my spiritual path didn't start with you, it's not ending.
Right. And it's also like, if that's the perspective you hold,
cool.
We got to put a big asterisk on your spirituality. It's not what it's about.
Right. And in the same way you mentioned sort of the narcissist and the unconscious, I do understand, I have compassion and understanding for why they needed to see me as wrong in order to maintain some semblance of structure and clarity. And
yes. This is why I really don't care what other people believe. My big thing is just don't push your stuff on me. I'm not going to push my stuff on you. Because if someone's whole worldview is formed around a religion or a belief system, and honestly, it's how they're able to operate and function and be in a world that's really hard to be in, why would I want to poke a hole in that and take that away from them? As long as they're not harming people, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. I apply this in my healing work all the time, this Rumi poem that says, only awaken those who are already rustling in their bed. For if
yes.
Who is asleep, they will only try and kill you.
I saw this quote I shared on Instagram. It was from a poster from some march that said something along the lines of, you can't make people woke, but you can make them uncomfortable being asleep. Exactly. So I feel like those two go hand in hand. Yeah. Say that again. You can't awaken someone.
So only awaken those who are already rustling in their bed. Or if you awaken someone who is asleep, they will only try and kill you.
This is the internet.
Right. And that's really what I learned by gaining skillful means, right? So as a child, I was just like saying it left and right, like whatever.
You were waking up sleeping. The people were sleeping, and then
and literally I'd get beat. It's like nobody wanted to hear it. So then I was like, wait a minute. We all have that sort of experience of realizing as a child, wow, not everybody's like me. We're different, and and then now to be in a place where people will show up to me and say, tell me everything that you see. Mm-hmm. Right. And sometimes I'm able to, actually very rarely am I able to just really speak freely, because usually their higher self will say, okay, we can only say this or this, because the capacity of what would serve,
yes,
what would fuse, or what would, so it's kind of like the psychic level of the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate this, because one of the things that irritated me when I did live in that conscious spiritual community was coming from a very egoic place. People love, this is one of the reasons why I'm so big on no unsolicited feedback, because you don't know what someone is ready to hear either. You don't know what someone's trauma is. You don't know where someone is with their mental health. Like, you don't know, why are you going to drop a bomb in someone's life that you don't know if they're equipped to handle? It's so inconsiderate and inappropriate. but also it's all about you. It's all about you showing off what you can see and what you know, or needing to, or not in that kind of context with something to prove in your own thing that you're like, you're feeling insecure or whatever. Like, there's just, it's so rare that there's a valid reason to do it.
Totally. And I love when you do that and how you handle that. I find it so powerful to actively hold a boundary and be like, I'm able to say whatever I want. This is for me. Yeah, keep it to yourself. And how difficult that is for people, you know, because
it's so hard for people.
Isn't that so fascinating? It's hard for people to keep their thoughts of you to themselves.
Yeah.
And you can't control what they hear or how they hear it.
Yeah.
Or and vice versa. It's so fascinating.
Well, and then it's also hard, and this is a lot of deep work that I've done. Some of it came naturally, but some of it I had to do to not care.
Absolutely.
What they think about. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm asking you not to tell me because I literally don't care. And I don't want to have to like even engage with it a tiny bit. Because the mind will engage with that.
Yeah, that makes it so valuable. It's almost like we should all do an exercise. Like every day, post something about yourself and say, and I don't want any feedback. Don't support me or tear me down. Doesn't matter. And to exercise that.
Yeah. And the support piece often people don't get. They're like, I was just being whatever. It's like, but I didn't ask. And when I didn't ask, like sometimes people are working on the resiliency. Sometimes people are working on standing on their own 2 feet. And it feels so condescending. And sometimes there's also an inkling of, and this is where similar to you, I think it expresses differently, but I could often hear what people aren't saying. You can almost feel when someone is getting some kind of satisfaction of seeing you in a lower moment.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
And they get to be condescending and feel better than you. And it's like, I'm not out here for your superiority hit of the day.
Exactly.
Keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself. Exercise that from over there.
And have fun with that.
Yeah, I love when I see you do that and seeing how people, I just think it's so valuable.
Yeah. Well, and people are so fascinating. So I'm very curious about the folks who come in and say, tell me everything. Let's talk about that desire.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's like they're putting their power on me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is always I'm not going to say a red flag, but it's always an interesting flag for me.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in relationships, and that includes, clients and patients that I work with that meet me halfway.
Mm-hmm.
I have a unique set of skills and tools, and if somebody's going to show up with the effort and the value of our time spent together, it's going to be empowering for both of us. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's going to bear the most fruit. And now that I've really honed that in myself, our sessions are so much more effective, and people walk away, with changes that are more lasting. And yeah, so when people show up and they're like, show me everything. Do I have cancer? Am I going to die soon? Or, it's like so silly, and even if I saw some of those things, and honestly, sometimes I do, I have to ask, is this useful?
Yep.
How would this be helpful to them in any way whatsoever? Is this going to help their moment? It's kind of like the past life thing, right? So whether it's real or not, how does it serve right now? Is it really helpful?
Totally. Well, and I've started doing Akashic Records reading. I did one of my practice sessions for you.
I loved it.
And people ask, I've noticed as I've been doing more, it's a service I do now, and I've been doing a lot of them. People ask about past lives a lot. And it's fascinating from the perspective of masters, teachers, and loved ones who are only going to share what's useful because that's their orientation. I'm learning in my own human experience, I'm learning from that, whatever you want to call that experience, just different realm of how they will communicate with a person what is necessary.
Right.
And the human mind really wants the specifics. Tell me who I was. Where was I? What was going on? Did I get my throat slit? Was I burned at the stake? People want to know these things, and they'll just share what is useful to know.
Right.
And that usefulness, I mean, we're both Virgos. We love that shit.
I think that people seek that, right, to feel unique and interesting, or it comes back to like the fear of death. It's like to feel important or alive or real, right? So if I can prove that this is a desk, if I can prove that this is a wall, then it makes me feel more real, right? And I think that's why people find religion. That's why people find dogma, because they can put their center of gravity in something outside of themselves.
Yes.
Doing the real work of knowing, like, wow, I am this infinite, brilliant, rad, amazing, and so are you, right? But for me to look at you and say, and so are you, without putting my center of gravity on you.
Yes.
Like, to be in that radical experience with another, with others, instead of, okay, what was, tell me something that happened in a past life so that I can feel unique or feel
right,
yeah.
valid,
Sometimes
significant.
relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that if something is relevant, it'll come right out. It'll come right through.
And it's any story in life, even in life now, like from the past,
For
we are
sure.
not our experiences.
And this is interesting because I had someone in my power group the other day asking about that. She's like, I know something happened to me when I was too young to remember, but I don't know what it is. Do I even need to know?
Great question.
It's such a great question. And I'll tell you what I said, and you can tell me if you'd add anything to it. I just said, if you need to know, you will. I was like, that's how life works. That's actually how grace works. If you need the details to heal, they'll find you somehow.
And I might even to go lean into that with her and say, if you feel like something happened. Mm-hmm. Be there with that.
Yeah.
Let your body release the story, and you don't necessarily need the words. And
exactly.
That's one of the things I loved about Kundalini yoga and real kind of potent spiritual practice, which is I knew I had a lot of stuff to process, and I didn't want to have to like talk it all out.
Yes.
I wanted to just incinerate it, burn it, offer it up, liberate it, and be like, okay, now I want to live in the present. I didn't want to carry that baggage, So
I love when stuff can move and I don't have to talk, process it.
Yeah, me too.
And there's and so for people listening, it's totally possible to process even some of your biggest, deepest stuff without having to wrap your mind around it, without having to know the details or the who or the when or the circumstances or situations.
And sometimes it's arriving at that place where the level of trust is there to allow that to happen that does all the work.
Right. And I also really appreciate, we kind of glossed over this, so I want to come back and anchor it in, what you were saying about people meeting you halfway. I noticed this as well in my work over the years. It's like when people want you to do the heavy lifting as the healer, guide, coach, mentor, facilitator, whatever, it's they want to just be like, fix me, solve my problems. That's I can't.
Right. And if I could, it wouldn't help you. We wouldn't be doing it.
Right. Yeah. So how do you guide people, I want to say, out of that place? Or rather, let me ask this way. What do you move people towards when you're getting that sense that they're wanting to just like dump it on you, like you do this work so I can feel better? What do you turn them towards as a better, more effective approach, I guess?
Sometimes a person will need to be in that place for a while. Right. So then I decide if that is actually where they're meeting me halfway, and I have to dial myself back.
Ah, cool.
Right? Because sometimes, and I've worked with people for years that are in that place of thinking that something outside of them can do it. So I might give them little rituals to apply to their life, or little changes or little things, and see what they do with it.
Yeah.
If they get stuck there, then you just kind of work there. Or sometimes I might, say, we might not be a really good fit for each other. I have a couple of other great options for you.
Mm-hmm.
But also sometimes loving someone in that place.
Mm-hmm.
I might see like, bam, this is if they did, it's all shifted. But that might not be what's highest for them. That might not be, they might need to sit there a little longer. So if I can dial myself back and realize that that's where they're meeting me, love them where they are, sometimes that allows it. And speaking to it.
I love this so much, and I experience this a lot in personal healing. I was seeing someone last year who I knew after about a month was really not good for me, but I had just like deeply fallen in love with this man. And I was like, okay, this is going to work its way through me. This is going to run its course. Let's see what happens.
Right.
And there were moments when I was doing things that I was like, why are you doing it? Like, you know better. And it was just fascinating to watch myself and be like, you got to do it. And literally just the other day, I was journaling around how I had to do these things that I previously would have judged myself for harshly, maybe even as pathetic, and just be like, I see you, girl. You gotta walk through this fire right now, and I'm gonna love you anyway.
Right.
And then I was done. Before we pressed record on this. There's so many things now after that experience. The exact same circumstances can present themselves. I can't even behave the way I used to behave. I'm done with it.
Right. But I think that when we do that, my experience is that's allowing that change which you might have had in your conscious mind.
Yeah.
Right? That's what happens when we're to be a great spiritual practitioner and you have this conscious focus, but then we also have trauma or unconscious patterns in our body or in our, in our psyche in that sense, right? So it's like you got to work it through.
Yeah.
You got to really let it penetrate you and learn it in a way that was more human.
Mm-hmm.
It's not judge yourself. And then now you can say, okay, there's no doubt in me right now.
Yeah. And I'm hearing you say basically the same exact thing for people. When people come for healing, that's where they are. I've had clients who've actually stayed with me and worked with me for years even. I used to judge that in my earlier years of my work to be like, people shouldn't need me anymore. And then, but that's where I was with myself, right? Thinking that I needed to be moving through things faster and not really understanding yet that things take time. It's not linear. We can't control. We'd all love for it to be much faster.
And it's relational, right? I mean, I have some clients that have been with me for 22 plus years.
Yeah.
And it's, we deepen it. And one of the things that I really love about my work and something that I remind myself before the start of any session is even if I've known somebody 20 something years, and in some ways I might know their body better than they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every time they show up, I meet them fresh.
Mm.
I remind myself, I don't know what they've been out doing. They're living their life. Everything's, new and fresh. And I'm meeting them. And you're like, I don't want to be held in the past. I don't want to hold somebody else in the past.
Yes.
Right. So to meet them fresh and to do this also in our personal relationships. Could be married to somebody for 10 years and you never can think you've got them figured out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that too. I'm remembering a time when I was working, this was in my early 20s. I might have still even been in college because I was in Baltimore and I was in this management training program with the company that I worked in. And I remember our division manager saying about one of the other people who was in our training, like, he noticed that we all had this expectation of her being a certain way, which was like messy and disorganized and late and like not having her shit together. And he noticed that we expected that. And he actually pulled everyone else aside to be like, as long as you keep treating this person this way, it doesn't give them any opportunity to be any different. So stop treating her like that's how she's going to be. Listen, she might still be that way or show up that way, but if there's any shot of her not, we have to be, he didn't say holding space for that, but his way of being like, we have to allow for that.
And I think that also in my experience, it allows the healing. It allows another entity to show up. It allows the magic, right? And next level, can we do that for ourselves, right?
Yes.
One of the things the other thing I was thinking for the truth that I'm working with, that's alive for me right now is this idea in Buddhism and in the Bund, there's the lokas. There's there's the realms of being that we can get stuck in the throat is the demigod realm, and it's like a competitive realm. But the negative emotion there is pride, and it's not, typical pride the way we think of it, but it's more the pride of a self-created conceptual box that we hold ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm the kind of person that wears these kind of clothes. I'm the kind of person that thinks this way. I eat this kind of food. These are the kind of people I would be friends with. And then it limits what life can even bring us. Because it might put somebody in our sphere that we won't even recognize because we're not even seeing outside of our own concepts. And the dangerous thing that I think that I see show up as pathology or issues in the body is when people don't allow a thought or a feeling because no, I wouldn't feel that way. And then they sweep all the shit under the rug and then it bubbles. And then, the body starts to have to process that as, a psychic or emotional food, blah, blah, blah. We can see where that goes. But how liberating, right, to keep revisiting yourself. Like, how do I feel about that? And to make room for a little magic.
So 2 years ago, right around this time, 2 years ago, actually, the memory that just popped up in my Instagram stories was I was in Paris and I was at the Louvre today, 2 years ago today. I was at the Louvre and there is this statue. I always want to say, I think it's Nike, but I might be wrong about that. But it's headless and armless and has the wings. And it says, like, do not touch the art. And I remember I took a picture of it and I posted on Instagram. And the caption was something about, like, it says we can't touch the art. Good thing there are no signs about the art touching us.
Oh, absolutely.
And I bring this up because aside from the Museum of Natural History, which I loved growing up in New York, my grandpa would take me there all the time. I've always been like, I'm not a museum person, especially like art history. I'm like, that's kind of boring. But out here in LA, they have the Getty Museum. Have you ever been there? Mm-hmm. One of the things I love about LA and Southern California particularly is how many things are outdoors. Even schools, right? Like you walk between classrooms, malls, right? Like you're outside. You're not like in a building. You're in a structure. And I went to the Getty. I had never been in all my years that I've been down here. Just the other week. And it was so funny because the thing that I was most drawn to was the garden. And all the fountains, like all the little running water conduits. And I was like, I didn't know that they had that. I was like, I don't know, I might be bored. Like, I don't really love art museums. Like, I'm thinking like inside stuffy, old stuff I don't want to read. And then I'm like, what? There's this magnificent garden. So it feels like I went on a tangent, but where it relates is like...
But it's the concept. You had a concept that got blown.
The concept that's like, if I continue to go, I'm not a person who likes museums. I would have missed out. Like that's like a sanctuary for me now, to just go sit on a bench in that garden. That's worth the whole $15 a park in my car.
Totally. Yeah.
So...
I love it.
I love it too. Can we talk more about the relationship between the bodies, like spirit, energy, physical body? Because I think that is something people are always so fascinated with, to understand that like something exists in their energy field before it exists in their body.
Yeah. Let me think. I'll come at this in a different way maybe.
Okay.
So a lot of the issues that people are having now or come to me for are digestive issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's 90% of the time, it's something that's being digested that's not physical food.
Mm.
It's not the physical food. And to become really aware of all the psychic food, and I use the word psychic loosely, right? Because it could be something, we could call it sensual food, but then that has its own kind of charge, right? But things that come through the senses. So if every day you drive to work the same way and you're seeing billboards, that is information that's coming into your unconscious, right? That maybe says, you are not beautiful unless you have this skin cream. And if you're not this body type, blah, 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 right? So kind of coming on the unconscious. Or if you go to work and people are gossiping all the time, right? These are things that we still have to process, right? And it's easier to see, like with a child, like I limit, like he never sees the TV on. I don't let him like listen to the news. Because when the news is coming at us, we can't filter, right? So if I'm reading the news, I can see a headline that says 5 people were, killed or whatever, and then I can like scroll past it. But if it comes in and we can't filter it, so there's this layer of filtering that we're not able to do when we're bombarded, unless we, do spiritual, psychic practices, which you can do. There are those. So I think all of these psychic foods coming into us that we have to process. And that doesn't even count the way that we talk to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships between your parents, which have triggers, right? So there's all these layers of psychic food and information that we have to digest. And often I see reflux, like in children, are because of just emotional things that they don't understand. So they don't have the concepts to be able to digest it. And if you relate to it like that, sometimes with kids it's awesome because I can relate just with their spirit body or their higher self, get it digested, help them understand it, and it just goes away. And I can release the sphincters in the body too to help that on the physiological side. But it gets more complicated, right? Because for example, when I wrote when my book went out, it was pre-sale, right? So the pre-sale happened, and then I didn't really know when it was shipped. It was actually shipped earlier than it was supposed to be. And I started feeling like crazy. I was having trouble sleeping. I was feeling like it was like a solar flare activity, right? I know probably a lot of people can relate to when there's a lot of solar flare activity. It's like you feel, like all these energies around. So that's what I was feeling. I'm like, but there's not solar flare activity. What's going on? And I realized all of a sudden I was now in people's homes and they were reading about my story or me and connecting with me, and they were now in my field. So then I had to expand myself, set up new kind of layers and filters that I had never had to set up before. And it took me about 2 weeks to kind of really expand to hold that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question.
I love it. And thank you for sharing it the way you shared it, because one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on is as I was moving into recording, which at the time of recording this, we're not at our 300th episode yet. We'll release 299 on Monday. Your episode will be 300 something. I forget which one. It'll be out in April. But, it's March 21st today. And as I was reflecting on the solo episode for episode 300, I always like to anchor in at least once a year and be like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's where we're going moving forward. And it also correlated with my one-on-one work, having to articulate. And I know you can relate to this because you have this Mary Poppins bag of skills and tools and abilities and understandings and the ways that you can help people. I try to find words to anchor in to help people understand what it is we do. And even on the podcast, what it is we talk about, because truth telling is such a big, broad stroke. What does that mean? And so when I say something like the truth that's always evolving within us and around us, okay, that gives people a little bit of context. But the 4 words that came out were healing, growth, leadership, and creativity. And so I'm so appreciative to have conversations around healing because, I've been, training and doing work in energy. I was pointed towards the energy body many years ago, and to understand how the two work, how everything isn't just physical, but also that we also can't throw away the physical. Right. We can't just go spiritual energetic, because to be quite honest with you, some physical body things I'm having right now are because I swung the pendulum a little too far to spiritual and energetic, and I was not tending to the physical vessel in the the very practical physical health way, what I was feeding my body, how I was moving my body, other than things again, the more spiritually oriented, the embodiment stuff that I love doing. But it wasn't I need to work out. I need to sweat. I need to be detoxing my body. I need to sit in a sauna a couple of days a week. You know what I mean? So very practical. And I think this is one of the things that we also connect on is kind of being that practical mystic.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I love that.
Where we can't, it's cool, it's awesome to hang out in the ethers, but that's not why we came into a body to live on earth, to exit stage meditation,
Right. Why come get a body in the first place?
Yeah, this is what we're here for. So to just encourage people as they're listening, always take your own path, but to understand that the interconnection between these different aspects of ourselves, it's mysterious, it's miraculous, it's deep, it's wide. So fun.
It's so fun. Absolutely. Yeah, we're this super expansive, magnificent spirit, right? And we packed ourselves into this funky little body, right? And
yeah.
your hands hands are awesome, but they're kind of weird.
It's so
They help
weird.
our spirit all the way down to our little fingers and our toes and our butt and our sex center and our belly, and, and we digest food and we poop it, and it's like, it's rad, but it's like totally strange. But I think the beauty is we wouldn't be able to experience ourselves without the limitation.
Yeah.
We experience being human through the limitation of this human body.
Yeah.
And I can hug you, and hopefully that'll happen soon, because I have the limitation of a human body, and so do you.
Right.
This body's built for pleasure. This body is built for pain. This body is built for exquisite sensation.
This will be a fun note to end on. Have you ever seen the movie Barbarella?
Yes.
So I haven't seen it. A friend was over last week and she was telling me about this scene with like Jane Fonda and the guy, and I guess she's from a different planet or something, or she's from like Earth in the future. And she's talking to the guy about having sex, but I guess in the future there's this way of doing it where like you sync up with some rhythm and you take a pill first, but you don't actually touch.
Right.
And then like they end up having like sex as we know it, and she's just like ballista out in like orgasmic worlds.
Totally. Right.
So I'm curious if you have opinion on this. You might not even have thought about it, but something that makes me really nervous about all of our technology is how disconnected from like the physical human to human contact experience, like virtual reality. People will be able to have sex that way. Is that really what we want?
It will always miss. The difference between holding a book and reading a book versus reading it on a screen. Mm-hmm. And I think in the future, people are going to hire new employees that make eye contact.
Will you come look me in the eyes for a couple of minutes?
Right. Like that have emotional acumen. And, I think it's interesting. And I see the disconnect of it, but then I also see the incredible reach, right? So you and I can have this conversation and touch many people. And I'm able to work with people, in other countries and, that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. And I'm always blown away by if I really drop in and I feel myself as the other, I can have that experience. But, my love language, my top two are like really close, and touch is a huge one.
Yeah, same.
Touch and quality time are where it's at for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I will always have in my practice like hands-on time.
Yeah.
Right? Say, oh, that's not scalable. That's not, and I'm like, okay, but it also feeds me. Like I love putting my hands on somebody's liver and, and helping the kidneys, and I love that.
This is why I do weekend workshops. I'm always super honest with people. It's not extremely profitable.
Right.
And in fact, I do everything in my power to continue to like lower the price so that more people can come. But to just be in the room and whoever shows up. I don't super market them either. Like sometimes there's only like 5 people and I'll travel to like a city like to be with 5 people, and it's the best.
It's the best. Absolutely.
So good. It's good for them to come together. I love hearing later on that they're still in touch or they became dear friends, and I'm like crying.
Yeah, we need that. We need that connection and community. And think about you and I met at a mutual friend's birthday celebration, which was a Peruvian gratitude ceremony.
Yeah.
Right? And how beautiful.
While there was another mutual friend who was like in visiting from Europe that I didn't even know was out. Like we had 2 lines of connection.
Totally.
So funny. So, okay, you're teaching all these cool classes now, speaking of being able to do things online. I didn't even know you had a book, by the way. Is that years old?
2014.
Okay, so kind of. So tell people what the things are, where they can find them, how to follow you and all that before we sign out.
Okay. So the book I wrote with Louise Hay and Heather Dane, and it was a culmination of blending nutrition and my healing work with Louise's work with affirmations, right? Because she really walked the talk, but she didn't feel like she could speak to nutrition because she wasn't an expert in that way. And how we both always would see autoimmune diseases being created because if somebody was just focused on affirmations but feeding themselves crap, or even the opposite, feeding themselves perfect food and doing tons of yoga, but then being negative would create this, right? So that's a beautiful book, and I do online courses based on that curriculum. And a lot of people are concerned that I can't use my gift like virtually, but I definitely can. And I keep those the same way. I keep those groups small.
Yeah.
So that I can really still connect with people, because that feeds me just as much as.
I hear you.
And I've been doing some intentional parenting courses, which I'm loving. I work with a dear friend, and she's a therapist and social worker, and adding, just to really look at that as a spiritual practice and heal ourselves as the child while we work with our kiddos. So yeah, my website, ahleakhadro.com, and Instagram and Facebook and all those places that I sometimes totally resist.
And we'll put links to everything in the show notes. So thank you so much. I knew I was going to love this. It's super valuable. I can't wait to hear the notes from people. Share this up, y'all. I mean, a lot of our audience has also come along on my journey of like being in the like spiritual and self-help world and industry and going, this isn't complete. Like there's a lot of lightwashing and whitewashing happening, but we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like, screw this. It's okay. Let's just go deeper. Let's be the people that get up in the nuance and the complexity and like learn things and deeply practice things. So this was so great. And I know that you gave people, literally no pun intended, but like food for thought. So thank you so, so much. We'll see you later.
And this just, again, it just gets us out of that box of what we think we can do because we've never tried anything else. It allows us to be messy and imperfect, and then also get information like, oh, okay, this actually opens something up for me in the genre that I am interested in. Yeah. And so just seeing all the women from different forms of expression, it's beautiful, it's inspiring, it's igniting, and I think it really helps to make an artist more whole to be around all of that.